Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu claims that Israel and US are winning the war,
as Iran is being decimated. In a press conference, Netanyahu said that he sees the war ending much earlier than people expect, while denying that he dragged US into the war.
Since the start of the war 20 days ago, we are winning and Iran is being decimated. Iran's missile and drone arsenal is being massively degraded and will be destroyed. And I want to close these opening remarks with one other fake news, and that is that Israel somehow dragged the U.S. into a conflict with Iran. Does anyone really think that someone can tell President Trump what to do? Come on.
Netanyahu also claimed that Iran no longer has the capacity to enrich uranium or make ballistic missile after 20 days of U.S.-Israeli air attacks.
We are now taking action not only to destroy the remaining ballistic missiles and nuclear programs, there is little left, but also to destroy the industries that enable the production of these programs. And already now, after 20 days, I can tell you, Iran no longer has the capacity to enrich uranium and manufacture ballistic missiles.
The Israeli Prime Minister hailed his cooperation with US President Donald Trump and suggested that he saw this war ending a lot faster than people think, but he did not provide a specific time frame.
See that as a real change that will follow this war, but I also see this war ending a lot faster than people think. I think you have to, in war, you have to grit your teeth.
Netanyahu clarified that Israel acted alone against the Asaluye gas field in Iran's South Pars. U.S. President Donald Trump had earlier indicated that he did not know in advance about Israel's strike on gas field, while Netanyahu said that Israel was holding off strikes after Trump told him not to hit Iranian gas fields.
Israel acted alone against the Asaluye gas compound. Fact number two, President Trump asked us to hold off on future attacks, and we're holding out. I don't think any two leaders have been as coordinated as President Trump and I. He's the leader. I'm, his ally.
Netanyahu also asserted that any Iranian attempt to close the Strait of Hormuz would fail. He said that Iran is trying to blackmail the world by closing a key international maritime route.
I think that what has to be done is to have alternative routes. Instead of going through the choke points of the Hormuz Straits and the Bab el-Mandeb Straits, in order to have the flow of oil, just have oil pipelines, gas pipelines, going west through the Arabian Peninsula, right up to Israel, right up to our Mediterranean ports, and you've just done away with the choke points forever.
The Israeli Prime Minister suggested that it is too early to say whether the Iranian people will take advantage of the conditions that Israel has created for them to go out on the streets. He, however, added that Israel was only a catalyst, and in the end, it all depended on the Iranian people. All right, we're now to discuss more. Are being joined by Adrian Calmo, fellow at the Arabian Peninsula Institute, terrorism and Middle Eastern scholar, and also the author of forthcoming book on Hezbollah. Thank you so much. Always a pleasure having you on our broadcast, Adrian. Let's begin with the big news. Now, of course, the White House is looking forward for $200 billion for this particular war. Do you think it's a small price to pay, as Trump says?
First of all, good morning to you, Josna, and pleasure to be here. That's a great question. This is one of these situations where I do think it's reasonable. I think look at the money that's put into the Ukraine conflict that's just essentially turned into a quagmire that hasn't gone anywhere. The Islamic Republic and what the threat that they pose in the coming years, months to coming years to come, was really terrifying for all of us who watch this very closely. And we always knew that we were going to have to endure some short-term pain to make sure that we don't have the long-term suffering that the region. And look, I predicted quite likely the world would have to face with a nuclear-armed Iran that's aligned with both Moscow and Beijing. So it's just something that we couldn't afford to happen. And we'll see if that money's needed, but it's always good to be prepared for these type of issues.
Right, Adrian, and do you think, is this a shift towards direct regime change, messaging on, how Netanyahu had spoken about this in his speech? Do you think it's like a direct regime change?
Yeah, I've always said right from the beginning, and this is just from reading the Iranian people and the actions that they've taken over the since roughly January of 2018, they've been in revolt. And I've said that Khamenei had a choice between his nuclear program or saving his regime. And Khamenei always knew that the greatest threat to his regime wasn't the Israelis, it wasn't the Americans, it was the Iranian people. So the U.S. and Israeli program was to remove their nuclear weapons and our capacity to reprocess ballistic missiles. But really the outcome, once they got into it and you start to degrade their military capabilities and their leadership at multiple levels, the outcome was always looking like regime change.
And just to take that question forward, is it actually a possibility, considering the fact that 3 weeks into the war, more than three weeks now, do you think that's actually a possibility? We know that Moshtaba Khamenei is, of course, he's not come on camera. We do not know. There have been doubts about if he's alive or not, but we haven't really heard anything from there. And do you think the Iranian regime as a hierarchy is that easy to topple?
There are a lot of people that think that it's difficult, that they've spent so many years building these structures. What we do have to understand is that there are some key individuals that are sitting in places that have built relationships over the course of 40 years and risen to the top of these positions, whether it's Ismail Kataib, head of MOIS, or the Ministry of Intelligence Services, or whether it's Ali Laranjani. Once they get removed, and I'll kind of give you a kind of an example, taking out Qasem Soleimani, you saw how difficult that was, and the regime never regained its capabilities as far as its proxies and its ability to exert pressure when Soleimani was released. And so this is creating a lot of fissures, structural. I would say weaknesses are being exacerbated at this point. And I've seen videos of besieged, the ground, the individuals on the ground hiding underneath an overpass, waving a white flag, saying, "Listen, we're done. We don't want to do this." And quite frankly, they're the people that they're the lowest paid individuals. They're the ones gaining the paychecks, and they're the one that have been told to go out and kill people, while the people at the top have been rich, and they're done with this. So I do think, and I'll make one more point. It's been something that hasn't been mentioned, and it's because they haven't been targeted. Is the Iranian army, the Artesh. There is a day after plan, I hear, to look at the Artesh, to say, okay, that can be our security forces. They're not tied to the regime. They've never been really friendly with the regime, rather antagonistic, and they're looking for defections. Also, hitting of infrastructure. I think that's why Trump was like, don't hit the South Pars oil field. It's the day after plan. So again, regime change, looking at making sure that there's a force in place to stabilize, and also the economic backbones are still there and can be rehabilitated and rebuilt.